Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our speaker series, Electric City Talks. We are thrilled you could join us virtually this evening. And one of the great adventures of holding this event online is people from all over the world can participate in this amazing celebration of International Women's Day. My name is Nicole Stevenson, and I am the chair of the Innovation Cluster Board, and I am excited to be representing the Innovation Cluster as the host of this evening's event. Before we begin, I would like to start with the land acknowledgement where the Innovation Cluster is located in Peterborough, Ontario. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude to the First Nations for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. The Innovation Cluster is a non-for-profit organization that has been changing entrepreneurs' lives for over a decade, scaling innovation and technology-driven startups through incubation and acceleration programs. This year's International Women's Day theme is Choose to Challenge. From challenge comes change. So let's all choose to challenge and call out gender bias and inequality. We can all choose to seek out and celebrate women's achievements. Collectively, we can all help create an inclusive world. It may come as a surprise to you that only 8% of all directors on boards of Canadian tech companies are women, and 73% of boards have no women at all. Moreover, only 6% of tech companies have a female CEO, and this is where we come in. Whether you are an entrepreneur yourself, provide assistance to entrepreneurs, or support local businesses, we all have a part to play in supporting equity and diversity in entrepreneurship. Together, we can champion the female entrepreneurs in our community and pave the way for future change makers and innovators. Tonight, we are so excited to have Saadia Muzaffar, one of Canada's top tech entrepreneurs and female founders, with us to discuss just how we can do that. Last September, our Innovation Cluster launched the pilot Women in Breaking Barriers program, the first virtual accelerator program specifically designed for female-led companies in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and social innovation in Peterborough and the Kawarthas. Canadian women entrepreneurs are key to our economic success, and they make invaluable contributions to our community. However, women still face unique barriers to starting and growing a business, and they remain underrepresented in our economy, especially in STEM and social innovation. The fast track programming and mentorship is tailored to reduce these barriers for female founders to grow and scale their businesses. Statistics show that it is difficult for women entrepreneurs to access financing and investment, where only 4% of venture capital goes to women-led companies. The Women Breaking Barriers program directly challenges those numbers by allowing each of the founders to pitch for angel investments to Peterborough Region Angel Network at the end of their 6-month program. Based on the data collected from the program's participants, the Women Breaking Barriers program is making a huge difference in the lives of female founders. And this innovative and uniquely targeted program is proving to be far more essential for female founders than initially anticipated and expected. The businesses entering the program are from several diverse industries. The first cohort, which began last September, brought together companies in sustainable agriculture, innovative wound care, blockchain, grocery and wellness apps, and more. In February, these entrepreneurs pitched to the Peterborough Angels and are continuing investment discussions. The second cohort started this month, and the Innovation Cluster is very excited to support these companies, ranging in industries from biodegradable products to mobile apps, food and drink distribution to cricket farming, and to help them scale their businesses. The founders in the Women Breaking Barriers cohorts are in attendance tonight, and we would like to thank each and every one of them because it is these female-led companies that has inspired this event. As strong and resilient female founders paving their own way to success, we hope this evening encourages and inspires others to do the same. This program was made possible by the support of RBC, allowing the program to come at no cost to all participants and ensuring accessibility for all. We are grateful for their support to make the Women Breaking Barriers program a reality. Along with the Women Breaking Barriers program, the Innovation Cluster has been proud to collaborate with FemSTEAM Peterborough, which encourages young girls in middle school to pursue education and careers in science, technology and trade, engineering, arts with a science focus, and math. Through mentorship and bringing awareness to the wealth of opportunities in these fields for young women, FemSTEAM Peterborough fosters an inclusive and encouraging environment for girls to pursue their educational dreams. FemSTEAM partnership with the Innovation Cluster provides the opportunity to hold an annual STEAM Summit for grades 7 and 8 in the area, as well as monthly virtual Mentor Mondays that introduce exceptional women in STEAM to grades 7 and 8 classes as role models. Let's pave the way for future generations together. I would now like to welcome Scott Mancini, Vice President, Commercial Banking at RBC. Their generous sponsorship allowed this event to be free to attend and to reduce barriers to entry.
Thanks so much, Nicole. It's an absolute honor to be here on behalf of RBC and as a part of this evening's Electric City Talks event. Success, solidarity, and the future we want. A Women Breaking Barriers, as well as an International Women's Day event featuring Saadia Muzaffar. RBC is a longtime partner of the Innovation Cluster, and through programs, for example, related to their virtual reality room, leading through ongoing business planning and training sessions for cluster members, as well as the very exciting and newer Startup Visa program. RBC is also very proud, especially tonight, to be a supporter of the Women Breaking Barriers program in Peterborough and the Kawarthas, a program specifically designed to reduce barriers for female founders to start, grow, and scale their businesses. As we've already heard, this program is making a difference to the participants, which is absolutely wonderful to hear. These efforts and this focus is timely, especially this week as we celebrate International Women's Day. International Women's Day is arguably more important for women this year and coming out of the pandemic. New research from RBC Economics highlights that almost 500,000 Canadian women who lost their jobs during the pandemic have not returned to work as of January, with more than 200,000 slipping into the ranks of the long-term unemployed, a threefold increase over last year. At the same time, nearly 100,000 women aged 20 plus have exited the labor market entirely, compared with fewer than 10,000 men. The report also sheds light on a disproportionately negative impact the pandemic has had on lower income women. We were reminded this week by our CEO that the advancement of women and diverse talent is core to our strategy and a top priority. Women lead many critical roles across our senior ranks, representing 46% of our executive levels, including 51% of new hires and 52% of promotions throughout 2020. RBC is committed to accelerating the pace of change and continue increasing the representation of women, particularly at the senior leadership level. We strive to set a clear example as a vocal champion of inclusion. That also means continuing to work with organizations focused on the advancement of women and providing pathways to prosperity for underrepresented women, as we're doing through our partnership with In Good Company, as an example. It also means using our resources to support female entrepreneurs, as we are doing here tonight, and in partnership with the Innovation Cluster. Canada is home to 1.4 million women entrepreneurs, with businesses that generate $117 billion in economic activity each year. We very much look forward to being a part of that number continuing to grow and to have many more success stories to celebrate together. I also invite you to lend your support towards the RBC Canadian Women Entrepreneur Awards and nominate one of the very deserving women entrepreneurs that have and are helping chart the path forward for our region. Through Women Breaking Barriers in this program tonight, aspiring women entrepreneurs get the opportunity to see and hear from women who have broken barriers, very much such as our guest and keynote speaker, tech entrepreneur, Saadia Muzaffar. Saadia is a tech entrepreneur, author, and passionate advocate of responsible innovation, decent work for everyone, and prosperity of immigrant talent in STEM. She is the founder of Tech Girls Canada, the hub for Canadian women in science, technology, engineering, and math, and co-founder of Tech Reset Canada, a group of business people, technologists, and other residents advocating for innovation that is focused on the public good. In 2017, she was featured in Canada 150 Women, a book about 150 of the most influential and groundbreaking women in Canada. She is honored to serve on the board of Women's Shelters Canada and the advisory board of the University of Guelph Centre for Advancing Responsible and Ethical Artificial Intelligence. Saadia, officially welcome, and over to you, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you to everybody at Innovation Cluster. These events look like magic, but there are so many people behind the scenes helping to make sure that it goes smoothly. So thank you to the crew. I also want to say thank you to everybody who's attending. It is not lost on me that we are still in a pandemic, and a lot of us are juggling a lot more than is normal, and a bunch of us are tired and we're scared and we're worried. So if there are people who couldn't make it because things are too much right now, we need to hold space for them, with lots of slow, gentle forgiveness for all kinds of circumstances. And for those of you who are here, thank you. I'm so grateful that you're choosing to spend, I was going to say your evening, but I hear that there are people from all over Ontario. Hello, Barrie, London, Cobourg, Ottawa, Haliburton. Hello, Newfoundland and Halifax people. Also international folks from the US, Trinidad and Tobago, Ukraine, South Africa, India, Vietnam, St. Lucia, Iran, Portugal. Hello, everybody. Good day, good evening, good morning. I am very excited to have this conversation with you today. When Innovation Cluster invited me to speak, they said that they would particularly appreciate hearing about how women can overcome challenges when it comes to raising money for their ventures. And I remember sharing with Alana that just that morning I had a conversation with a friend who has built a very successful brand, but has still been struggling through the dissonance between how much the community she built it for valued it and how much sponsors were willing to pay to engage with it. Most of all, she was not alone in saying that she felt undervalued in discussions about money. My friend had wanted advice on how to price her business offerings. And at the end of our long conversation, I shared with her a lesson that has been a hard one for me to learn and that still fights me. And that lesson is this: all calculations about money ultimately are a conversation about worth. Most of our culture has no room for women feeling confident, assured, assertive, sure of themselves, and their self-worth. And among many hurdles, this keeps us and holds us back. But here's the thing that we don't talk about. Assigning worth is all about power. Who can assign and who needs to just line up and ask? So I'll share a story with you to start. Um, Many years ago, when I was building my tech startup with a co-founder, um, we were in the initial stages and we had put out a job posting to hire our first salesperson. And we were doing interviews together. My co-founder was a straight white man. He was a technical co-founder. I was the president, and I was leading sales, marketing. So this person that we were looking to find was going to be reporting to me. During our interviews, one of the people who had applied, let's call this person Howard. Howard is a straight white older man, was going through his pitch and sharing with us his plans for how he was going to do the distribution and sales for our product. In the middle of this discussion with my co-founder and I, Howard turns to me and says, "I'm sorry if this is getting like too technical for you." And when he said that in an interview where I'm supposed to make a decision to add him to our organization or not, I'd like to tell you that I had a very sharp comeback for him, that I put my foot down and said, absolutely not. This kind of person will not be joining our organization. But none of that would actually be true. We were, the truth is that we were so broke as a startup, and we were so desperate to hire a sales team because that's what we were being told when we were going out and trying to raise a seed round for our financing, that we hired him. Howard, needless to say, did not improve with time. But this was one of the hundreds of times that I learned that the table where I was sitting was not set up to make me feel like I belonged. And I was being asked to play a game where I will not be set up for success like the others. Which brings me to this question. Why is women's labor, and in all its outputs, so completely devalued? I believe that in order for us to have better conditions in which we operate, we have to understand and name and learn to talk about the forces that shape it, which essentially is a conversation about power. Who has it? How do they control and accumulate it? And how can we redistribute it? I hope that today's conversation will be an attempt to do that at a high level. So let's situate ourselves, right? So it's 2021. We are a year into a global pandemic, a crisis of multiple systems that our governments have handled suboptimally compared to many other countries, poorer countries, I might add. The rich have added considerable wealth to their wallets and their accounts. The working poor have had the bottom fall out from under them and are having, in Toronto, are having to choose between paying for the internet or paying for food. And I can tell you that they're choosing to pay for the internet because their children's education depends on it. The vaccine rollout has been messy. In all of this, as Scott mentioned, the COVID-19 crisis is having a disproportionate economic impact on women. They say that there are several reasons for that. They say that it's likely because the sectors and businesses that have been impacted by shutdowns predominantly employ women. They say it's because these are also sectors in which women entrepreneurs are more likely to operate, and that their businesses tend to be newer, smaller, and less well financed than those owned by men. They bring up the fact that when schools shut down, it forced many more additional hours of unpaid childcare onto parents, and in a staggering majority of families, that parent who had to drop out of the workforce or take a serious hit was a woman. Women also dominate the frontline responses to the pandemic. So here's what I want to ask. How come we ended up in all the varied scenarios as the ones who were already so precarious that we didn't have an airbag in front of us when the economies hit the brakes in North America? To understand this, we have to unpack how work is organized in the systems we now live under. In recent history, production and reproduction uh, has been made more and more separate from one another. So when we say production, what I mean is creating goods and services and commodities to sell in a market. And when I say reproduction, we mean the work of taking care of humans generally, right? Be that having and raising children, taking care of the sick and the disabled and the elderly, so like healthcare type of care work, keeping households running with cooking food and cleaning, all the way to growing food, so in agriculture, taking care of our ecologies, etc. All of this is reproductive work. I bet you're already doing the math ahead of me. The work of production, that is producing commodities to sell, is defined as economically productive. It is paid work, in most cases, even if it's poorly compensated. Whereas the work of life giving and sustenance, reproductive work in all of its expansive forms, is work that is increasingly invisibilized. It's defined as non economic, it's unpaid, and increasingly it's feminized. That is, it's mostly carried out by women. And this feminization is explained through naturalization, explanations that assert that we are just naturally good at doing this work. And because we are naturally good, we are overrepresented in those sectors. And because of the naturally good, it must then mean that we are, we feel that this work is our responsibility, that we are duty bound to perform it and not sully this contract with society by demanding to be fairly compensated or wanting to be safe while performing it. We are surrounded by this booming narrative that our work of reproduction and sustaining life is too important and critical for us to be distracted by any other type of work. Yet, in the same breath, in all the ways that our society measures value creation and wealth, we are told very clearly that our work is marginal and not important. This, my fellow women, is our collective term sheet. You and I are signatories on this term sheet from the day that we were born. So, a term sheet, we know, is a document outlining material terms and conditions of a potential business agreement, establishing the basis of future negotiations between two parties. And you can tell that we need to redefine ours. It's International Women's Day. It was International Women's Day yesterday, but it's also Women's History Month, I hear. And I've been reading a lot about the state of women all over the world. Did you know that women are the largest consumers of antidepressants in the US, which is probably also true for Canada? During the pandemic, a bunch of us women friends were talking about the different conditions and ailments that are making, working through and living through the pandemic really challenging. And one of the things that kept coming up over and over again was autoimmune disease, which is basically your body turning against itself because of a shock response. So our bodies are rebelling against our own selves because of prolonged stress and duress. Feminist writer Silvia Federici says that a population whose reproductive capacities are threatened is a population whose future is not guaranteed. Us women, we carry this stress in our bones, on our shoulders, stirred in our coffees. It's everything from holding your keys between your knuckles when walking through an empty parking lot, to learning to fight to get appropriate medical care when our symptoms are constantly dismissed as it's all in your head. All of these stresses, obviously heavier if you are racialized or disabled or queer or poor or indigenous. It's a sobering position to be in. Where do we go from here? How do we redefine our term sheets so, in scholar Donna Haraway's words, we can figure out how to live and die well together on a damaged planet? Let's talk about success. A lot of you are entrepreneurs. Others are working on side hustles, and still others have regular jobs. The first thing that I've learned that we need to be clear about is that no matter where you are situated on this spectrum, you and I are still workers. I bring this up because Silicon Valley has exported this culture that sells us the dream of entrepreneurship as some kind of shortcut to autonomy, being your own boss. But the truth is, this kind of division is less and less material as all of our outputs get commodified as we go forward. Yes, you can call the shots as your own boss, but it's still work, and we cannot forget that our success cannot be built on extraction and on the backs of others unfairly. Let's choose a definition of success that does not run us and others into the ground. As author Matteo Ascaripour says in an interview, we are taught to take it. Take it until you make it. Take it until you get the job. Take it until you get the promotion. Take it until you make 6 figures. For so many of us, this taking it never ends. It never ended for our grandmothers, not for our mothers, and it won't for us if we don't change what we're demanding. Women in the 70s fought for the right to work outside the home, so they too could earn wages and be independent. But in so many ways, this did not include fighting back the undervaluing of our work. And the result today is that working women are still tasked with the primary work of reproduction and taking care of families. And the undervaluing of our work and worth has continued even in the paid workforce. Work will not love us back. We need to do this work of valuing and loving ourselves with as much urgency as we seem to be asking for women's representation on corporate boards. What does loving ourselves look like? And I'm talking about a very political definition of love here. You know, it looks like slowing down and making room for others to slow down as well, especially in a pandemic. It is refusing to be the foot soldiers of systems that take advantage of us and others. It's us as gatekeepers in HR. It's us arguing with other women over whether they should get paid to do something or not. It's us believing in abundance. It's us not holding space for each other to be messy and to make mistakes. Us not holding each other accountable. Like I said, work will not love us back. We need each other for that. And your one beautiful life. And its purpose is not to constantly be proving to others that you belong, that you're worthy. Give yourself permission to sleep 8 hours a night. Give yourself permission to eat your lunch and go for a short walk. Give yourself permission to build your dreams slowly and steadily instead of sacrificing your health and well-being at the altar of growth at all costs. Feed yourself, feed your community. You don't have to be alone and lonely in your pursuits. All of this is us rejecting the rules that were put in place to keep us disciplined, little productive cogs. All of this is saying we want to be lucid about the trade offs that we are making. And all of this is taking our power back and beginning to lay the groundwork of promising new reproductive infrastructure. But here's the catch. The only way to be able to make these changes is if we stand with each other. There's a reason why there is such emphasis on controlling women's lives by controlling our bodies, of dividing us, of pitting us against each other, of creating this bizarre scarcity. By defining our roles as in service to systems that keep us under-resourced and impoverished and marginalized and worried and stressed and consumed with work and family care. So much so that we don't even have any time or capacity to think with each other. You and I can change that. We can refuse the models of this fake and false scarcity. That there is only room for one woman on the board or one woman in the executive suite. I am looking especially towards white women who have made many economic gains on the backs of migrant women and indigenous women. We see you, and you need to relinquish the gatekeeping and hold the door open until there are so many of us on the inside that we can revolt against the undervaluing of all of our collective work. Our solidarity needs to be wide and expansive and generous. It has to include everyone from, girl bosses to frontline workers, to nurses, to teachers, and food service workers, and tomato pickers, and meat packers, and garment workers. This part is long, slow, hard work, but it's non-negotiable. Because divided, we fall. Revaluing our work is intrinsically linked to erasing divisions between us. Finally, what does a beautiful anticipation of the future feel like? And you'll notice that I said feel, not just look like. I am personally on a long and continued journey of coming back home to my body. I am learning to trust and value my intuition and voice all of the joy and apprehensions that rise and fall inside of me. Women have been severed from our bodies in ways that have really hurt us. I'm learning to be vulnerable with my kin, some who have chosen me and others that I've been lucky to choose. Women have been told that we are over emotional, that we are not rational. The fact that a staggering majority of environmental and social justice protests are led and organized by women, queer and trans folks, shows that we feel too much because we have not forsaken the sustenance of life on this planet, the only one we have. Revaluing that necessary work is a matter of life and death. Our job number one is to outlast this bullshit and not let the terms kill us for profit. So I will end this talk with a prayer that Canadian author Sarah Haji tweeted in, I want to say 2013, 2014, somewhere there. It's been a while. This prayer tweet launched 1,000 t-shirts and mugs and stickers. I wanted to wear my t-shirt today, but it didn't go with my blazer. So you're just going to have to believe me when I say it. Here goes. Lord, give me the confidence of a mediocre white man. Google's definition of term sheets says that this agreement may be binding or non-binding. My hope is that after tonight, many more of us will join forces to declare the term sheet that we were handed as non-binding. As I said to my friend Bianca last night, this is the work. We write at dawn. Thank you.
Wow, Saadi, thank you so much for that. How incredible, inspiring. I left with feed myself and stand with each other and everything else that you said. It's just incredible. So thank you so much on behalf of everyone. I think I saw someone in the chat who said amen. And I think that is what signifies or solidifies everything you just said. Thank you. So we're going to open it up to questions and answers. And so one of the questions that came in, at what point when you started your Tech Girls Canada, did you feel that everything was starting to take shape and direction in your business?
You know, the honest answer to that is, in hindsight, everything's 2020, right? When you're in the trenches, I think most of the time, you're just trying your best. I will say though, I think that the reason why I started the work of Tech Girls Canada was because I didn't see anybody like myself being featured. Remember, this is 8 years ago. It wasn't so trendy, diversity and inclusion, as it is now. We can argue that we perhaps swung the pendulum in like the other direction way too far. But back then, there wasn't a lot of conversation for a woman, a person of color, an immigrant. I came here when I was 19. So I was not a child. I was born and raised in Pakistan. A queer person, like all of these identities were not showing up. And I think that part has changed, not just because of our work, but because of the rising tide of so many voices. It makes me believe in the power of women coming together and demanding better. And I want us to get impatient. I want us to really ask for what we deserve and not be shy about it.
Thank you. We have a comment from Jillian who says, thank you so much. What gives you the confidence to have these tough conversations?
Right. I think, thank you for that. I think getting older. I've loved getting older because when you're young, I think you're so unsure about your place in the world and everyone else who has figured it out and can shut you out, that you're very, very careful. As a woman of color, you're very, very careful what you say. Rarely does your inside voice come out. But getting older, I'm very grateful that I've found, sisterhood. I don't speak alone, and I think my confidence comes from the fact that we stand on the shoulders of giants. A lot of women did a lot of hard work and sacrificed and raised their voices so you and I could have this conversation today. And
Absolutely.
It's our responsibility to continue doing the work.
Carissa asks, what advice do you have to grow small businesses?
I think one of the things that I wanted for us to start talking about was, especially given that things are tough, that it's a pandemic, like there are layers and layers of challenges. Silicon Valley's culture will have you believe that there is a formula, that they've figured it out, and you just have to follow it. And women know that the formula doesn't work for us. It doesn't, So we've always been hacking. We've always been figuring out different ways to do it. And I think the thing that I would suggest is if your business is taking time to grow in a way that's steady and reliable, please give yourself permission to grow it slower. Please don't be pressured into a hockey stick on your deck, because so much of that is unreasonable and not sustainable. And you can look at Silicon Valley's results for that. Companies that hockey stick are also crashing. So if what your business and your idea needs in terms of nurturing is slowing down, and that gives you your health and your perspective, and you can live a more balanced life, I think we need to give each other permission to do that, and ourselves.
With that said, how do you maintain balance and self-care within a stressful existence of an entrepreneur?
That's what I was talking about. I was talking about how it feels radical to say this, and what a shame that it feels radical, but we need to reclaim it. Give yourself your 8 hours of sleep. I'm a 9-hour sleep person. My best before time. Anything less than that, we're stretching it. So I've made time whenever I could, and I realize that I'm very privileged and very lucky that I can do that, because there are women who have 3 shifts, and they don't get to make this choice. But I think a lot of us are just stuck on this treadmill. We're just stuck, right? Because we're told that this is what you have to do. You have to sacrifice, always be closing. That's madness to always be closing, because work is a part of us. Work is not us. Our community is what we need. And if the last year has taught us anything, it's that.
So how do you quell the little or sometimes big voices in your head that tells you you can't do it or questions your decision making?
I think the way that I've addressed it over time has changed. It used to make me panic a lot more when I was younger. And I'm not by any means suggesting that just by virtue of getting older, things get easier. But I think trying to figure out where the voice is coming from is really important, especially for women. There's a reason why there aren't a lot of women in STEM. There is a reason why a lot of women don't get to make their reality of entrepreneurship real, and it's not them. It's a big cultural, social soup that we're in. So I think finding the source of that voice means that you can address where it's coming from, because it's not you. And there's always doubt, and doubt's not always bad. It makes you sharper, helps you make your contingency plans. But if it's paralyzing you, you need to sit with it and find where it's coming from.
What tips do you have? I know you said a lot in your speech this evening, but what tips do you have for managing time, people, and family while still being able to focus on business? And I know you mentioned about the 9 hours of sleep. How do you keep work-life balance?
In so many ways, I think this question is so fraught for women. We're tasked with at least 2 full-time jobs, taking care of our families full-time, several full-time jobs if you have multiple children and elders in your family. And then we have our business, which is, more than a 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of forgiveness for yourself and slowing down. Those would be my 2 tips. If I'd known this, I think my time building my own startup would have had less panic attacks. If I had been given permission to just take my foot off the gas pedal a little bit and take care of myself. And that would have meant slowing down. And I just never heard that message around me. Like, slowing down was not an option.
Yeah.
And I think that's just silly. Like I was saying, I think we have to look at it and see that we outlast a lot of this bullshit. That's also our job. We're not sacrificial lambs just to prove that we had it in us all along. We do.
Absolutely. What are some specific and measurable strategies that we can use as women in holding the door open for other females identifying entrepreneurs to ensure the path forward for them? Particularly, how can we support women of color and shift the current statistics?
The thing that I've seen to be most impactful is lending your social capital. If you're inside a room, sitting at a table where there aren't other women, particularly there aren't racialized or indigenous or disabled women or immigrant women, you need to make sure that you help find them a seat. And sometimes that means sharing your power. We can't be insecure about our power and try to help other people. It's not charity, it's strategic. The more of us in the room, the better the chances of our agenda making it.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go to one of the live answers. And the comment is, wow, thank you so much for all you've said tonight. It's such an important message. How do we get that out to the rest of the tech sector, which is predominantly white male and straight, least likely to want to hear and adhere to this?
That's a fair question. I want us to build our power. I want women to build our collective power, which is not to say that we don't need to go have these conversations and have learning opportunities with the others in the tech sector. I just think that we need to get our house in order before we can go do that, because individual conversations will never cut it. This is a conversation, like I said, about power and a redistribution of power. Nobody likes giving away their power. It has to be taken. And the way to take it is to make sure that you are strong when making your demands. So I want us to have these conversations amongst ourselves first and be united in our front in what we demand, because there is so much more that we have in common than what divides us. And then we can talk about what's on the other side of that table to negotiate.
Absolutely. Jess has a comment. She says, great presentation. I struggle with taking business failures / mistakes personally. Do you have any advice on how to overcome this or move forward quicker and not letting it hold you back?
Very, very real. Very real. I think two things. It has really helped me to have my group of friends to confide in. My group of friends are my sisters in this, you know? They don't they just not just cheer me on, they hold me accountable too. When I'm slipping on my goals, they're like, we talked about this. Can we go back to that? But also, I think believing that so many people who are now overnight successes took so long and made so many mistakes, that we are also allowed to be making mistakes. This is why I was raising the fact that we have to give each other permission to be messy. And this is particularly the case with racialized women and immigrant women, because we have no room to make mistakes. There is no permission for us socially to mess up and learn. Whereas if you go to Silicon Valley, you will hear that, oh, if you've not failed at a startup, you're not really an entrepreneur, right? So it's a privilege on who gets to make a mistake and not. And we need to make it so that everybody can. And that comes from each other. So my, I guess, advice would be to surround yourself with a group of people, women, in my case, who understand where you are, but also stay true to what you're trying to do. You're allowed to make mistakes.
Very nice. And I have an anonymous attendee who asks, how can us white women accelerate the inclusion of diverse women in spaces that we gatekeep?
I appreciate this question. It's very direct. and is very direct in a way that's useful. I think the adjacency of white women to white men is what complicates these things. So you have to be really clear where your allegiance lies. Because if you are drawn to the fact that you could be the next Bill Gates or what have you, and you can imagine yourself, the balance of the priorities is not in the right place. I think we need to reimagine what success and solidarity looks like. And the same thing that applies to white men in the tech sector also applies to white women, which is to say, this is not a charity case for you to let in women. You know, this is not something that you're doing because you want to be a good person. I think you want to do this because this is the right thing to do. And that means sharing power. And that means sometimes stepping back. That means sometimes making a mistake and owning it and being told that you make a mistake and taking up less space in places where you're already present.
Absolutely. So do you have any parting words for us, Saadia, this evening?
Parting words. I wanted to say thank you to everybody. Thank you for engaging with this. I am constantly learning. All of the things that I shared with you are things that I am also currently learning. And I'm very excited and hopeful and optimistic about our ability to dream alternative futures. We don't have to all agree on one future, but I think it's really, really important for us to make room for each other and have a generous, abundant view of what we can do together. Because if we are fighting for scraps, we're not even at the table. We're not playing the game that we ought to be playing. And for us to demand more than equality is the place where I want to go. I want better things. I don't want to settle for equality. I think a lot of the things that are on the table right now are messed up and we want better. So I hope that you'll be fired up and will slow down in your life to allow yourself the opportunity to imagine beautiful futures together.
Saadia, thank you so much for your talk. It was so inspiring, and you've left us with a lot to think about and a lot of takeaways to work on ourselves and our sisters and our broader sisterhood. So thank you again. I'd also like to thank Scott Mancini and RBC for their generous support of this event, and to the innovation clusters for supporting entrepreneurs, and to all of our attendees, thank you for joining us this evening. It's been a pleasure and a privilege, and happy International Women's Day to all.